What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Welcome back to Top Bins, the show bringing you all the action from the Premier League in SerieA, England, and Italy. I am your host, Matt, joined by my co-host, Dom. Dom, how are you?
Good, man. Good. Timing was a little off there, but it's all right.
Timing was a little off. That's okay. We're in preseason. You know, that's what you do. And you get your conditioning up to peak levels. You know, we're not operating at full systems here. We're just starting to warm up as the season is, we're actually only a few weeks away, to be honest. So I hope your sharpness gets a little better because we need more once we get into August.
I'll be getting there.
The fixture list will be congested, and we'll have to. We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm sure of it. We are in the dog days of summer, as it was, and also the dog days of content because they're just again. Not a ton going on with the transfers, if I'm just being totally honest. And, we're still sort of in this gray area where it's a little too early to be previewing a season. But, it's okay. We're here for you. Because maybe you're just checking back in. Maybe you've decided that you're going to just pay attention to other things, or you've had a busy summer. You haven't really checked back in. Maybe you're just starting to get back in and listen and read and get pumped for the season. So we're going to call this the In Case You Missed It part of the show, where we highlight some of the big news things and maybe elaborate on what that could mean for this season, remind you of some maybe key transfers and things like that in the Premier League to just keep it in the back of your mind, because maybe you've been on a little bit of a layoff here. One of the biggest stories of this offseason so far is Mauricio Pochettino taking over at Chelsea. This is big for really two reasons. One, it's the third Chelsea manager in the last 12 months. That's always kind of a big story when you've had that much turnover and you're choosing another man to go up to the firing line. The touch line. And I think also, the fact that he's most well known, I would say for most people, for managing at Tottenham, which is a big rival of Chelsea. Really a one-way rivalry in a lot of aspects because Chelsea have dominated Spurs pretty much this entire century. But, there's that obvious sort of factor to this. The other thing is, I don't know what this is going to look like. Pochettino is he had a little bit of a break after PSG, and he hasn't really been a consistent manager over the last few years. He's done some punditry work and things like that, but since leaving Spurs, I would say that he hasn't really found a great run. And the PSG team that he was with was also a hard situation to handle, as every PSG team is a hard situation to handle because of the personalities and egos involved. So I don't want to ding him too many points for that, but this is a guy that I think has. It's hard to say that he's like grown or developed or changed over the last few years. It's going to be hard to imagine, especially with how it sort of ended at Spurs, that this is a slam dunk kind of assignment. I think he's a good manager. I think he's one of the better ones you could get on the market, but I don't know that this is a guy that I'm like, wow, easy pick, easy pick, and it's going to go great.
I think people are kind of like, I guess, just have a nostalgic view of him and look at his time like previously in the Prem with like rose-colored glasses. Like he managed a lackluster Spurs side. That's what it is. I mean, he went to PSG and had some of the best players in France and still lost to a Lille team for the title. So like, yeah, I agree. It's not the most spectacular signing, but it's kind of one of those that you expect from a team fully in their banter era. Like, you've got instability within the managerial appointments. As quickly as one comes in, they leave, and he seems like he's one of those guys with experience that the club wants to bring in and try to manage this team. And, with Tottenham, still rumored to lose some key pieces in the transfer market. It's not looking good, bruv.
I do think Pochettino, one of his skills is that he's able to build a team, especially with young players, and he's able to develop young players, and that is certainly an aspect that I think interests Chelsea. And there are definitely young talents within that team that he could help kind of guide along and grow. They don't have Europe this year. And it's hard to imagine what kind of a successful season even looks like for them necessarily. I don't want to say the cliche top 4 in a cup, but I do think that would actually be unironically a very good season for Chelsea. The squad is interesting too because this is a team that was dealing with a lot of bloating, all this past season. I think it's part of the reason that Tuchel and to I think a bigger extent Potter were so unsuccessful here at Chelsea was because they didn't have like top level options. They didn't have it felt like a lot of the players at Chelsea over this past season were very samey. No one is really separating themselves in an elite way. There was no guys that, you're automatically penciling in every week outside of like Thiago Silva. I think that was the only name that for me was, and then Enzo Fernandez, I think after he was brought in was again, a standout performer. But largely speaking, especially in the attacking areas of this team, a lot of wingers, a lot of guys that are just like not as impactful as you want them to be. It's hard to pick, and that's why I think Potter was constantly trying to find a system that worked, constantly repicking players and kind of shuffling through. So, but they've done a pretty good job of moving on from a lot of those players and trimming down the squad now to the point where their midfield is a little thin, and they've been chasing Caicedo all summer, and it seems like they've had to back off that because of the price, but. I am curious to see what the squad looks like. They're not going to have the crazy fixture congestion because of the lack of Europe. So that, it could be a benefit to them, in some ways. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting season for Chelsea. I think they're one of the more interesting teams to look out for because there's just a lot in the air and there's a lot riding on this season going successfully.
No, I mean, what the only person you'd say was a star in the Chelsea team was Mason Mount. He's not even there anymore. So like
he had a pretty underwhelming year too.
And that's the thing, right? And he has this big, marquee transfer to Manchester United. So I'm curious. I saw some news about Chelsea, since we're on the subject. Pochettino did say that like Conor Gallagher is in his plans, that he won't be sold or loaned out somewhere. This whole saga between Gallagher and Chelsea continues. And I think it just plays into your point. You said like the last two managers didn't have the most elite options to put into the lineup, and it seems like Pochettino's just trying to make work with what he has. And do you see this like benefiting either party?
Keeping Gallagher, yeah. I think because the pathway is opened up for him, right? Like, and we talked about him last summer. And that I always felt that he was much more Mason Mount than he was anything else. And that I think that was part of the reason I was not too thrilled with him staying at Chelsea because I just didn't see a huge pathway for minutes. And he did not get a lot of minutes last year. It wasn't until like the final third of the season when they had like Lampard in that he was getting kind of regular starts. I think there's a good player within Gallagher. I don't think he's a bad player by any means, but he still doesn't do... He's like Mason Mount light in that he does, and Mason Mount already is to me was not an elite player. He's a good, I think, complementary piece, but I don't think he's like the crown jewel in the midfield. And I think Gallagher is like a tier below that. So I think he's got some developing to do. Again, Pochettino, that seems to be one of his skills over the course of his career. He's been able to do that, especially with midfielders. People are going to make like Christian Eriksen comparisons. They're different players to me, totally. I think Conor Gallagher does do his best work in the final third, but he does have good energy for a midfielder. I think he's capable. It's about his discipline and his like tactical flexibility. To see what that midfield looks like. That midfield is a big question mark for me coming into this year, though, is how exactly that's going to function. But he's got time to figure it out. So we'll stay in London. Ange Postecoglou. Not the easiest name to say. I will just put that out front. New Spurs boss. Yes, Spurs have a new manager. Antonio Conte, of course, shown the door. Similar kind of season to Chelsea in that they had managerial issues and then squad issues and kind of underwhelmed at times in in terms of performance. I do think it's an interesting season for Spurs because you kind of have to wonder how dependent on Kane staying is this team's success. I think
A lot.
his answer is a lot. But, if you know that he's leaving next summer, do you try and cash in now and take some of that pressure off of your new manager and, try and rebuild the squad? I don't even necessarily need to go out and buy a striker. I think you could invest in defenders, and that might actually be the better situation for Spurs. But yeah, I think it's a fascinating season. Ange is interesting. He comes from Celtic, where he was pretty good, and he had some of the most dominant Australian teams. He's actually Australian, despite his name. I think when I first heard of him, I thought he was like Romanian or something like that. But yeah, he's of Greek descent, but he's Australian. He managed the Australian men's team. He had
The Socceroos.
some mild success with that. He did get them qualified for the 2018 World Cup and then stepped away from managing the team. So, yeah, he's an interesting character. I'm looking forward to seeing how he develops. But, it's another thing I think to keep in mind that you've had, two of the top 6, in quotes, kind of make managerial change in this offseason, and that's no small thing, right? Like there's definitely some instability within the two of those. And I think Chelsea have questions. Spurs have I think even more serious questions about this season. And again, if it's Kane's last, or if he already had his last year, I'm really curious.
Yeah. Who knows? For one, being a fan of a club that has let many players walk for free and not like cash in on their value, and seeing what it's done, and the struggles that are laid in front of the team after a few years because of that decision, I really do think that Spurs need to cash in on selling Harry Kane. That money could be used, like you said, for a couple different places. Spurs have other options of players who play a more, play more of a position out wide, but can play in the center. I think like Son can play striker. Richarlison, I think, plays better as a center forward than
Richarlison had more yellow cards for celebrating a goal last year than he did goals in the Premier League. So I jury's out on my end. I'll say that much.
So it's. I'm never confident about Spurs. I'm always going to make fun of them. They're like the Roma of
the
Premier League.
That is an insult. Roma have won a league title this century. That is very rude. I can't believe you would say that.
I had to get a little dig at you, man. You got the Roma kit on.
What do you want from me? All right, and when I walk in next with my Sorrento kit, you also gonna give me shit? What is this?
No.
Give me a break here.
No,
right?
I would really respect that kit. That's I like myself a hipster kit, right? I like.
It's got a seahorse on it. All right, you just.
Dude, it's great. That's great. Love that.
That's all for next week for you. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting season at Spurs. The Kane stuff. I will say the fact that Bayern have not moved on to a different target. They've agreed personal terms with him. It's all about finding a deal with Spurs. Makes me think that they believe that there's a possibility of getting this thing done. I think if they really felt like this was impossible, they would have moved on by now. And like we talked about last week, it does feel in some ways too that the striker market is sort of plugged up by the Harry Kane Bayern duo. If they do move on from that, you expect maybe Vlahovic to potentially move on, even someone like Kolo Muani potentially leaving Frankfurt. Who knows? Like it just feels like there's a shakeup to be made, and it's dependent on Harry Kane's future or not. And it's going to be a lingering question whether or not, if it gets resolved this summer, and it'll linger all season too. If he ends up staying at Spurs, and his decision for next summer. We've had some big exits from the Premier League. Some, I think, very notable faces. Some players we've gotten very used to over the years. Not all of them superstars necessarily, but Wilfried Zaha, one of these names, to Galatasaray, moves on to Champions League football. They still have to qualify for the group stage, but you expect that they like their chances there. It's interesting. Wilfried Zaha, over a decade ago now, makes his move to Manchester United, which ultimately doesn't work out, heads back to Crystal Palace, becomes sort of the face of that club for the last 8 or 9 years. at many points was also linked to Arsenal. That loan obviously, never materializes, but just kind of one of the streets never forget type players. Just a very, very exciting player to watch on his day. I think, some clubs will be happy to see the backside of him, knowing that they won't have to to deal with him anymore because he was that kind of player. But he's now out of the league. You won't be seeing him on your Saturday and Sunday mornings anymore, and that might be a change for some people. N'Golo Kante moved to Al Ittihad, one of these Saudi Arabian clubs. Again, another familiar face, although not so much over the last few years because of his injuries, but. Again, a big name. I actually just recently rewatched a cinematic highlight of the 2015-16 Leicester title winning season. I was reminded of N'Golo Kante's involvement there, and then went straight to Chelsea and did it all again in even more dominant fashion, winning the league. So, one of the standout, I would say, midfielders of the 2010s in the Premier League now is no longer part of the league. And Granit Xhaka, the much beloved, much hated, just one of the I don't know, complicated figures of the entire 2010s at Arsenal. At one point booed off by his own fans.
Very polarizing player.
Very polarizing player. Really peaks and valleys with him. Had a great final season with Arsenal, nearly winning a title. One of his better seasons, I think, in an Arsenal shirt. Like you said, a polarizing, I think, a complicated sort of legacy with that club. But he's on to Germany at Bayer Leverkusen. He'll be playing with Xabi Alonso, or under Xabi Alonso, I should say. Those are three big names that have moved on. There's some others, but those are the three that I think most people have been familiar with over the last few years, and that you just won't be seeing on your screen anymore.
I really got to respect what Galatasaray is cooking up. I mean, you add Zaha to a team that has Mauro Icardi, Dries Mertens, and Zaniolo, who Zaniolo's enjoying his time playing for them. He's getting back to goal scoring form. The fans love him. And they've got a lot of streets won't forget players. They got like Lucas Torreira, Angelino. And so it's like they've got a decent squad to be very, very competitive in Turkish league. And then, they're one of those teams that kind of is like, hey, let's put together a team that can be like competitive, steal some wins, and try to make a run in Europe. Like that's their MO. They're one of the two teams, in my opinion, in Turkey that are always, you can fact check me on this, they're like always fighting for top spot. It's like basically them and Fenerbahce and like Besiktas every now and then. I don't really watch the league, so I have no idea.
Those are the big three to know.
I like seeing them. I like seeing them play though in like whatever European competition. They're in the Champions League this year, correct?
Yeah, they're still still technically in the qualifying stages, but they're playing like a Lithuanian team. You expect that they get through there, and they're going to work their way. They hope at least to the group stages. So. Yeah. Another big thing to keep in mind, big piece of news, Ivan Toney suspended for half the season due to gambling and bets that he placed. So Brentford, I think, are a team that a lot of people were very excited about, and I think for the neutral fan are a fun team in some ways. They're going to be missing, one of the spear tip of their team, a guy who can score in the high teens within the league. It's going to be interesting to see how they carry on for an extended period of time without him. They played pretty well in the games that he missed last year. And Brian Mbuemo especially really stepped up, Yohan Wissa, but it's kind of a different thing when teams can really plan to play you without Toney and the extended absence he will have. So those are some of the storylines, some of the new faces, some of the faces you won't be seeing anymore, which hopefully has kind of caught you back up. In case you missed it, there you go. We've rounded some of the big stories up for you. Dom, you sent me this in the Twitter DMs, and I liked it so much that it's making it to the show. It was a poll talking about, because unfortunately, David Silva has had to retire. I want to say prematurely, but he's 37. But he was planning on having another season, of course, but had an ACL injury in training, and as such has taken the hard decision to retire, which is tough, because he's just still a very impactful player, still playing, at Real Sociedad, and just kind of a tough one. But it's kind of reignited, I think, a debate about best Premier League midfielders over the last, again, I just think all through the 2010s, and there are quite a few, obviously, to pick from, and I think there's kind of four that come to mind from that time period. I think David Silva.
Mm-hmm.
I think really maybe even five. You could say Yaya Toure, his teammate. Cesc Fabregas, especially on his return, with Chelsea. He had a really, really good season. He had a few good years with Chelsea, and obviously still in the very beginning, still with Arsenal. Mesut Ozil, of course, and Kevin De Bruyne. Those are, I think, all the kind of the big guns to keep in mind.
Would you include Hazard in that conversation, or do you think of him more as an attacker or winger?
I do not consider him like a center midfielder. I guess on Fantasy Premier League was technically called a midfielder, but so is Mo Salah. So I I won't be changing those orders. Just off the top, David Silva versus Mesut Ozil. Who you taking? Because that was the poll you sent me. It was tight.
It's super tough.
I think it was. I want to fact check myself before I say anything crazy and lie. The poll that you sent me had over 1,000 votes. 52% voted for David Silva. 48% voted for Mesut Ozil.
I think people, it boils down to for the easy way out in the conversation and the debate. People will go to trophies, right? And both of them have a World Cup. So it's very tough, to hold that above one of the other players, kind of like in the Messi Ronaldo debate. So David Silva has a Premier League trophy, right? So that's the tough thing.
He's got 4.
Yeah. Can we say that, he's a product of City oil money? I mean, yeah. But
yes.
But this is the thing, though, is like he's such a good player. Like at City, he was a very good player. And at Valencia, he was an extremely good player. He was an essential part to Spain's success in the World Cup. Like, I mean, that guy just did things that other people cannot do. Ozil is he's got so much sauce, man. He's like the way he carried himself on the field, his passing, his dribbling, his creativity. It's just, I'll always remember that one goal he had. I'm pretty sure it was in the Champions League. It could have been in the Premier League. If you know what I'm talking about, maybe you can. The one where he takes the half volley or the full volley and he bounces it on the ground over the keeper. Oh, it's just to be able to, and he did that purposely. It's not like he mishit it.
It was against Ludogorets. I think.
Yeah, they won 4-0 or something like that. It's crazy what he could do, and not just for Arsenal. I mean, this guy was part of, the probably the most electric time in Spanish football, which was when Barcelona and Real Madrid had the two best teams in the world, and like the FIFA Pro Best 11 for 5 years in the early 2010s was just all Barcelona Real Madrid players, and Ozil was one of the main guys. He took Kaká's spot. Really, Kaká was riding the bench because of Mesut Ozil. Think about that. That's
as a young player too, by the way. I think.
Yeah.
So there are a few things here. One is he was at 20, 21 years old, playing for Real Madrid in a very meaningful way. In, again, like you said, one of the most electric and I think two of the highest quality rivalries. All of it. Two just very, very good teams going at it constantly. And he was great in those teams. Yeah. One of the assist kings of Europe. Here's his numbers. His first season with Real Madrid in the 2010-2011 season: 6 goals, 16 assists in the league. The following season, the 2011-2012 season, which Real Madrid did win the title, which David Silva also won the title with Manchester City that year. That was the Aguero year. 4 goals, 18 assists in the league, and then the following year, 9 goals, 13 assists in the league. So he came to Arsenal, and again, it's hard to really say too much because transfers are so different now, and even transfers then were not quite as a surprise. There were rumors before that, but it was a shock signing that
Mhm.
Arsenal signed him. This was, again, a guy that had not even really hit the prime of his career yet, was considered one of the best playmakers in all of Europe, the assist king of Europe, as he was commonly referred to. Was just a really bright and upcoming player. So it was very surprising when he obviously makes that move. And then in England, he had some mixed success. He had some injury years, which were tough. But when he was healthy and when he was playing a lot, he was very good. His best season, of course, in England was 2015-2016 when he had 6 goals and 19 assists. Was getting close to those that Henry total. Looking at just career stats, it's interesting. Mesut Ozil played in 426 games. In those games, he had 73 goals and 133 assists. David Silva played in 571 games, has 96 goals and 132 assists. So, David Silva's obviously had the longer career, has played well at a high level into his mid to late 30s now, which is, of course, like we said, unfortunately ended. But, David Silva does have the higher counting stats. He also does have the advantage of having, almost 150 more games. That'll do it for you. But both of them were productive players, and I think especially were very, very impactful. And you look at, some of David Silva's best years. One of his best seasons also came in the 2011-2012 season where he had 6 goals and 15 assists. He also was very influential in that Euros win that year. I know you'll remember that very fondly. I believe he scored in the final, if I'm not mistaken. I know that one's a tough one for you, but just again, a ton of staying power with him. Even in like the last few years at Manchester City when, that team was so good, he was still such an integral part to that squad. The 17-18 season when Manchester City were runaway sort of title winners. He had 9 goals, 11 assists in the league. Those are good. That's Bukayo Saka numbers. Everyone's like losing their mind of it.
Yeah.
It's not quite exactly Saka number, but it's that same type of thing where it's just a very, very versatile, great player. I will say, like, if you're comparing between the two of them, I think David Silva for me was always the much better dribbler. Incredibly, incredibly hard to dispossess. Just like, and
He's a little shorter, isn't he?
Yeah, I think by about 4 or 5 inches. I think he's like 5'6" or 5'7". Ozil's
Yeah,
close
he's
to 6 feet. Like
little
Ozil's
crafty.
like deceptively on the taller side.
Yeah.
But yeah, David Silva, I think, could always just kind of like blend through players in a way that Ozil never really could. Both of them, though, I think it's very hard to separate in terms of passing. I think they're both amazing at it and could just break any line they wanted to at their very peak. As far as goal scoring, I think it's also kind of hard to separate them. I will say I think David Silva found himself in better positions, whereas Ozil I think was much better at kind of creating his own shot. But again, I think it's pretty close. For me, personally, I would go David Silva. You could, I think, make the argument that Ozil maybe has the higher peak of his career, but I think David Silva was better over a longer span of time, and I think that gets my vote personally.
I hate to be I called this the lazy argument. Does Ozil have a Champions League trophy?
No.
No.
But neither does David Silva.
Yeah. I just couldn't remember if he was on a Real Madrid winning team. But based off of this poser jersey that I have over here, I think I'm going to take the other side. I think I'm going to take Ozil. I don't know. I look back on him more fondly than David Silva, because I was a low-key closet Arsenal supporter. I don't know. I wouldn't even say closet because I was very open with it at the time. So, and that was when Ozil was at the club. But yeah, like I remember seeing him playing in the World Cup, and that's what like spearheaded his move to Real Madrid. If I could be mistaken, but I think like he played really, really well for Germany and was like showing out.
Cup,
yeah. And then he got his transfer to Real Madrid. And yeah, like you said, he was absolutely incredible there. Like one of those players like you want to hate because like he had this like kind of like, I don't know, like cockiness about him, but he was so goddamn good and he knew it. But then like he came to Arsenal and you could see like as much as you want to hate him, he just pulls off things, and you're just in disbelief. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Ozil.
I I I I like Ozil. I think he's really incredible to watch. I think he's a great like highlight reel player, especially incredible first touch, like great control. Again though, I think for me, if you're talking about like who I'd rather have like in my team build around type of player, it's David Silva. Now I will say this: Ozil had the big advantage of playing with those Real Madrid teams, playing with Ronaldo, and that obviously helps his assist numbers. He did have, I think, the lesser squad when he was with Arsenal pretty much the entire time there, but was still putting up big numbers. David Silva does benefit from the fact, like you said, that he was playing in a very good team with very good players around him. He's playing, like we said, with Aguero, Yaya Toure, company, like some of these big names. But
Ozil also had a point in his career where he did the same thing.
right,
Just not in the same league.
Comparing their time in England, I think,
Yeah.
Ozil definitely had, I think, the lesser, he's playing up top with Giroud, who didn't score a goal for like 4 months. It's, that was kind of a tough aspect there. But
Hey.
I think David Silva's the more complete player, and I think he did it at a higher level for longer. I think they're hard to separate when you really like try and like break them down. But I think David Silva just proved that he was able to make an impact on title-winning teams time and time again. And again, he did have help on those teams. It was not just him, but I think he was a supremely talented player. And it's going to be tough. It just sucks that his career's ending not on his own terms, it seems.
Yeah, I will say this: I do look back fondly on David Silva's time at Valencia alongside David Villa, which was just David squared is just incredible, and some of the other guys on that team, they had a sneaky good team that could like compete for like a top spot, a European spot in La Liga at the time. So it was like them two. They had who else? Simao. They had Jeremy Mathieu in defense. They were a fun little squad, a little hipster squad for everybody.
Yeah, like I said, I just think it's him, and I think you cannot, under any circumstances, tell the story of 2010's Premier League football without David Silva. You have to mention Ozil at some point, I'm sure, but I think, again, David Silva is much more integral to that history and to those accomplishments, and was also incredibly talented. And again, when you consider too, like international success, David Silva was right there for a lot of that. He was filling in as sort of Spain striker in the 2012 Euros. When they did kind of some unprecedented stuff. So, and that's not to discredit. Ozil was part of a World Cup winning team as well. So, I think they're both very, very successful players. I think for me it's David Silva, but I think we've been lucky to see a lot of very, very good midfielders in the Premier League in our lifetimes. Because you could also do from like the 2000s the debate between Lampard, Gerrard, and for me it's really between those two. But I think we've been very, very lucky in that aspect.
Yeah. Shall we go to a transfer roundup?
Shall we go to a transfer roundup? Dom, one of your most prized targets.
Christian Pulisic?
Yes. Renato Sanchez, it seems like might be headed to Roma. We'll have to see, of course, because he's been linked to so many teams. But
we're not here we go status yet.
No. Although here we go status is in serious jeopardy because he's here we go to a few things that have not happened, like the Josko Gvardiol signing, which he said was close to completion, and then RB Leipzig was like, he did not have that medical. I don't know what you're talking about. And that deal is still, in case you're wondering, not gone through. So, but yeah, Renato Sanchez to Roma. Seems like this could be in the works. Be an interesting signing for Roma. They're sort of spinning the roulette wheel again on a PSG midfielder, and hoping that this one works out instead of Wijnaldum. But I don't hate this signing. I think it's a good. And listen, we've talked about Roma getting their signings done early, and they've made some pretty good ones. I think this would be a good complementary piece to that midfield. They could really use it. So I would be interested. Like you said, though, when we were talking about it, he's got to stay healthy. That's really it means nothing if he's only playing like 16, 17 league games. So you hope that he can find fitness. I know this one also hurts Dom. Frank Kessie is apparently returning to SerieA. not to
Juventus.
Milan, to Juventus, coming back from Barcelona.
Yikes.
Barcelona money laundering at its best, signing a player on a free and then selling them for just pure profit. It's disgusting. You hate to see it. True slime ball behavior. But it is interesting. You know, this is a great fit in the midfield for Juventus. We've seen that Frank Kessie is a very good midfielder. You know, never really got like a full run. I felt like at Barcelona it was always going to be a little bit of a challenge for him to be like an established starter every week in that midfield. But you know, and it just became a little crowded, especially with some of those young talents breaking through. But I think it was a great signing for Juventus. I think if I'm Milan, I'm maybe picking up the phone to see if I can work something out. Although I don't know about the wage here because I'm sure he got a big boost from leaving Barcelona, and Juventus might be one of the few Italian clubs that can actually pick up that tab.
That's what I think too. I think that's the main thing. That's the main reason why he left in the first place. And Milan have been linked to a couple other players similar in play style to Kessie, his fellow countryman. What is it? Ibrahim Sangare. I may have not said the right first name. Is that his first name?
Yeah.
PSV player. He's linked with Milan, so another similar player. I'm curious to see what his return to I'm guessing the San Siro will be open again this season. So his return to the San Siro and how he's received by the Milan fans. All I know is that Juventus have a history of buying former Milan players, and then they end up being very successful at Juventus. So I just, hope for them not to have a successful season or as successful season as my team.
Hey, that's fair. That's that hater energy that we love to bring here. This one's interesting because of the implication, if you will, of this signing. Raul Jimenez to Fulham from Wolves, kind of an out of nowhere transfer in terms of just the name. He's never obviously really recaptured his form since his head injury, but before that he was pretty interesting Premier League striker. He was hitting in the mid to low teens, which is a really good level to be hitting at. Wolves I think have struggled for goal scoring, especially with his issues and obviously with the injury that he had, but again his inability to return to that form. It's an interesting signing for Fulham because of what this also means, which it does seem much more likely that Alexander Mitrovic will be going to Saudi Arabia. Their initial bid where it was not suitable for Fulham, but he's sort of had his head turned by the offer and the money that he will be making. And so it seems like Fulham are going to be working out some agreement, and we will no longer have Alexander Mitrovic either. Off the back of his most successful top flight campaign, of course, he decides to take the money and run. So Raul Jimenez to Fulham. Again, I was. It's so strange because in days like this, it feels like every transfer is just immediately leaked and we know about, and maybe I just missed something, but this one kind of came out of left field for me. It is interesting what's going to happen with Fulham this year, if we're just looking long term, because they did have kind of the benefit. We talked about this with goalkeepers coming into this year that had really, really strong XG, above saved numbers, and you see some regression sometimes. Fulham could have that with Bernd Leno. I think, again, if you take Mitrovic away from the situation, we'll see. I think some of their defensive numbers, could, maybe come back down to earth. I'm not saying they're going to get relegated, but I think Fulham could have a very, very rough time compared to last season, where they finished comfortably in mid-table. They actually finished in the top half, which is, again, when you're talking about a newly promoted team, that's a great finish. But this could be a turbulent kind of year for them, especially if they lose Paulinho. That would be a huge red flag for me if they lose him, because I think he's so integral to breaking up play for them in the midfield, and I think it'll cost quite a bit for a team to do that. But we'll have to keep an eye there. But yeah, I am interested to see what happens with Fulham this year, because it was already a team that I had earmarked as a potential regression candidate, and maybe has a tougher time this season, and now You lose Mitrovic. I don't know.
No, it's tough. Interested to see if Raul Jimenez can regain some form. But, man, dude, Saudi Arabia has taken everybody. I mean, there have been some players that have turned down super lucrative offers. I mean, the highest profile one is I'm pretty sure Mbappe doesn't want to go. I'm pretty sure he turned down the Al Ittihad offer.
He's not even talking to.
Yeah,
he's like not even entertaining that.
Apparently, PSG sources say that they believe a secret deal between them and Madrid have already happened. Who knows? We'll have to.
So here's the Mbappe PSG saga in a nutshell. PSG convinced him to re-sign this contract, and it has a player option so that he could extend an additional year. As it is, he's a free agent next summer. The entire time before this extension, he was linked to Madrid. It seemed like he was going to Madrid, and it was a pretty serious turn that he ended up staying at PSG. I think we've already forgotten that. It really just felt sort of pre-written that he was going to Madrid. So now, again, he's going to be a free agent next summer. He said that he's committed to PSG for this season. PSG seem upset at the fact that he is potentially leaving for free, walking to what they believe to be a rival in Real Madrid, at least for the Champions League. And I think they're doing everything in their power to make sure that life is as uncomfortable for him as possible, that he either signs a new contract or they've talked about loaning him out this season because they're not interested in playing him if he's going to have this deal to go to Madrid next year. They left him off the preseason tour to Japan. It has the potential to get kind of ugly here, and I hope it doesn't. Meanwhile, Luis Enrique, their new manager, is walking into this mess. We talk about Pochettino and his struggles with the PSG team. Here's another coach that is going to have to sort of face the music of Paris here. So, it's kind of a mess. And like you said, Mbappe is not going to be taking whatever it is, $700 million for 1 year. Although Saudi Arabia was happy to say that, hey, even if you're just here for one season, we'll pay the £300 million or euros to PSG to get you here, and then we'll also give you an additional like $700 million just for playing one season. It's insane that that's a real offer, but I think he's probably making the right sporting and player move by not going there, because I think he understands that would pretty much take him out of any running for Ballon d'Or. Like, I think in his mind, if he can win a Champions League and get geared up for a Euros this summer and potentially win a Euros, he's looking at the Ballon d'Or being his next year. So that's where his mind is.
Yeah. Also within PSG, apparently Verratti has been given the green light to go to Al Hilal. So they're buying everybody up.
They're buying everyone up. Jordan Henderson already completed his move, announced it before the club even did. He had this little promotional video about him leaving. He's on his way, and Fabinho also seems like he's on his way to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So everywhere you look, Sadio Mane even Bayern is getting bailed out by Saudi Arabia because they're buying him and clearing those wages off his books. I really feel for Bayern Munich. They're just like a team that really needed that extra lifeline, really needed some financial a financial boost, and
it's funny.
Very fortunate that they're getting it. So.
A quick scan of Fabrizio Romano's page tells me that Manchester United and Højlund Manchester United has given a verbal proposal to Atalanta. Allegedly, Man United has agreed on terms with the player, but they're waiting on the green light from the club. Lautaro Martinez turned down Saudi clubs. He's happy at Inter. Let's see, Fred to Galatasaray. Isco to Betis. And James Rodriguez, the streets will never forget player, to Sao Paulo. He's going to be playing in Brazil.
Good for him.
Good for him.
Good for him. We'll always have the 2014 World Cup,
And that goal.
You know exactly what goal I'm talking about. By the way, speaking of the World Cup, U.S. women just kicked off 2 minutes ago, playing the Netherlands, have the opportunity to not quite mathematically guarantee themselves, depending on what else happens in the group, but really put themselves into the next stage and could potentially even win the group tonight with a win. It's been fun watching them so far. They had a really dominant display against Vietnam. So, Women's World Cup has been a lot of fun to watch, and I've really enjoyed watching these U.S. teams so far. Looking forward to watching them as they just kicked off against Netherlands. Replay, of course, of the 2019 final. Netherlands are one of the other women's teams that I've always really kind of liked watching. So that was a tough final for me on a personal level. Not really, because it's always go USA whenever it's – I don't know about you, but whenever it's Olympics, World Cup, stuff like that, I become the most red-blooded patriot I could possibly become. It is just –
I think we spoke about this on the World Cup prep episode. We just turn into a different –
you got to kiss the
beast.
ring, all right? You got to kiss the ring. That's my attitude. But
and when it comes to the Women's World Cup, you gotta respect us.
going for
Come
a
on,
historic three-peat. So yeah,
Come on.
that would be great to see. But there are definitely some other teams that have looked really sharp, through the first few weeks here.
Shout out to Ireland and the Olympico that was scored.
They did get eliminated today, but they do walk away with their first World Cup goal, which is great for them. It was honestly
What a goal! What a goal!
Olympico's, that was a really nice one. Sometimes they're a little sloppy. That was pretty
nice.
clean.
It was nice.
I liked it, but Don, that's all we got for tonight. Anything to say before we get out of here?
Take care. Brush your hair. Tune into my FIFA podcast. Well, EAFC podcast. I don't know when I'm going to be recording the next episode right now. I got to figure that out. But tune into that. I streamed the recording of that episode on my Twitch, just like I do occasionally with Top Ends. Twitch.tv/SerieA. No gaming right now, but the podcast can be found there. It's like one of the homes of that. So take a look at that. Follow me on Twitter. I'm on Threads now, so check me out on Threads. I'm pretty sure it's the same as my Instagram, so check me out.
Check him out, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back next week, and like I said, we're barreling close. Premier League starts back up Friday, August 11th. That is not that far away. Check your calendars. Trust me, it is not as far away as it sounds like it is. But we'll be back next week, wrapping up more action, probably talk a little Women's World Cup, talking more transfers, and maybe look at a little ahead to the Premier League, the SerieA season. Who knows? But until then, we'll talk to you next time. We'll see you later.